Good morning, good morning. Welcome to week 10, chapter 10. Get and use data throughout the change process. We're going to need data throughout the process, but we're also going to need data after the change process. And that's what I really take from this chapter. Maybe that's just a bit of my bias or my perspective, shall we say. Based on the change path model from our authors, we are now up to the institutionalization. So now we're putting it into play, shall we say. And it tells us to track the change periodically and through multiple balance measures. Develop and deploy new structures, systems, processes, knowledge, skills, and abilities as needed to bring to life the change. We are now at the institutionalization part of it. We're putting it into play. All that work that we've done building up to here, we're now going to see if it works. And that's what we need to make sure that it is working, continues to work. And if it doesn't, what are we going to do about that? We've often made changes in our personal life. And for whatever reason, they were not as successful as we wanted, or not successful at all. But in an organization, we need to make sure that we are monitoring, controlling these changes. And this chapter is going to talk a lot about that. Select and deploy measures. What measure are you going to use to find out if the change that was put into place is effective? And it gives you some suggestions. Focus on the key factors. To measure that lead, to use measures that lead to challenging but achievable goals. So we want the challenge, but we want to make sure they're also achievable. The change that we put in place needs to be a change that we have determined is achievable. We can say we want to change, and we want to go from being a $1 million organization to a $30 million organization. Is that achievable? Possibly, but we need to make sure that the measures are measuring that the data along the way, that it is something that is achievable. Use measures and controls that are perceived as fair and appropriate. Avoid sending mixed signals. Ensure accurate data. So important, so important. Match the precision of the measure with the ability of the measure. These are all some great pointers. And there's others as we go through the chapter. Different controls that we can use, different measurement tools that we can use. And that's what we're really going to be learning throughout this chapter. We can use the balance scorecard or a risk exposure calculator. So we're going to be looking at how are we getting the data and what is that data telling us. And then when we get the data, we gather the data and we now analyze the data. What does it say to us, and what do we need to do to fix it if the change is not achieving what we thought it was going to achieve? We can see as we watch the data as it comes in and it progresses. Maybe everything was fine up to step 3, but come step 3, that's where the data starts to show that there was an error in our thinking, or an error in the data that we collected previously, whatever. And that's where we need to monitor and either make a change or an adjustment or whatever we need to do. So this is a very important chapter because we can do all the change that we want to, but we need to monitor to make sure that that change is working effectively. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And we need to put those controls in place early. We can't just say, okay, we're going to check this in a year. You know, when you've made, I cannot tell you when you should monitor, when you should put those controls in place. It's going to be different for everything. But you will know within your organization what is appropriate. You know, we should be seeing changes we should be seeing an increase, or we want to see an increase in the revenue by this time. And if you haven't, why? Because based on the data we had, we should be seeing an increase in revenue in 6 months. 6 months comes and you haven't. Or maybe even 3 months comes and you're like, okay, our goal was to see an increase at 6 months, but at 3 months, we're not even seeing anything. We're not seeing an increase at all. Is the next 3 months where we set that goal at 6 months? Is there enough time? Do we need to change something? Do we need to change the process that will lead us to get to that revenue increase? Or do we need to maybe extend that time frame because it wasn't practical to begin with? So these are things that the monitoring and controlling are going to help us with. It's a very important chapter, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. I think it's going to add a lot of insight. Because again, we've been talking so much about the change, but now we're monitoring the change, and I find that very intriguing, very interesting, and I hope you do too. I hope you have a wonderful week 10. Reminder that week 11 work is due Wednesday, December 20th. I have to have grades in by Friday, so I need that to me Wednesday so I can do all my grading on Thursday. And as always, please remember to check your course resources for some supplemental data. There, again, it will add to what we have learned from the textbook and our discussions and our assignment, and it might also be something that will help you understand the concepts a little bit better. And thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week 10.